Cameroon's 92-year-old President Paul Biya has announced he will seek an 8th term in power. Elections are scheduled for October. Now, Biya's had frequent health problems and spends much of his time abroad. Here is a look at Africa's second longest-serving president, who first came to power in 1982.
At 92 years old, Paul Biya is the world's oldest-serving head of state. And he says he's not done yet. In a social media post, he announced he would run for an 8th term in office this October. He says the best is still to come. Over 4 decades, Biya has overseen a mixture of stability and controversy. Under his leadership, Cameroon has seen major infrastructure growth and remained relatively stable in a turbulent region. But his long tenure has also drawn criticism for democratic backslide, corruption and a lack of political renewal. One of the biggest challenges remains the Anglophone crisis, a violent separatist conflict in the country's English-speaking regions that has displaced thousands and disrupted daily life. If re-elected, Paul Biya would be 99 by the end of his next term. For many Cameroonians, the question isn't just about age, it's about what kind of future the country wants.
So, how have people in Cameroon reacted to the announcement that Biya wants to serve another term? DW's Blaise Young reports from the capital, Yaoundé.
Paul Biya might be the world's oldest leader, while the majority of Cameroonians are under 30. Still, members of his political party, the CPDM, say he is the best man for the job.
We need someone who can translate the aspirations, our aspirations, into actionable policies, actions and programs which bring welfare. And I think President Paul Biya has a track record of doing so. Like he himself admits, it has not been perfect, and there is no leader in the world who's been able to do everything. But I think the determination is there, and he has shown that he can do it.
But critics say Biya's 4 decades of leadership has done little to tackle Cameroon's economic problems. Neighbor Julius runs a mobile phone repair shop. He dropped out of school because he couldn't afford the fees. And he says even graduates struggle to make a living.
When you look for work, you don't find any at all. There are no companies employing people. For example, here in the city of Buea, there are not many companies capable of employing even 500 people. There are a lot of graduates and undergraduates, but there are no jobs.
Biya's main opponent is opposition leader Maurice Kamto. Last month, his party organized a rally to welcome him back to Cameroon from France. But Kamto was prevented by police from leaving his home to meet his supporters.
We're not here to protest. We took the opportunity to come along and see our president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement Party. But we're surprised that even the roads are blocked. I honestly don't know why. We'd followed all the instructions that had been given. We didn't come on motorbikes, we came on foot. Even on foot, there are 3 barriers preventing us from reaching our headquarters.
Paul Biya has been accused by his critics of using force to intimidate those who oppose him in order to maintain his long grip of power. He has promised better days ahead.
But youth leader Lena Fabrice disagrees.
It's going to be disastrous if Biya becomes president of Cameroon again, because this will be the elastic limit of patience for Cameroonians, for myself, for members of our future movement, for members of so many other political parties that I know in this country, for the Gen Z generation. We've lost a lot of good brains already to America, Europe, and other parts of the world because of political frustration, political instability, and the mismanagement of the current regime and the current president. So imagine another 7 years.
Neighbor hopes the next 7 years, no matter who is in power, will bring something truly new for young people like himself.
And to gain more insight into Cameroon's presidential politics, we've invited Agbor Balla onto the program. He is president of the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa. He's also the founder of the YouTube channel Agbor Balla Speaks. Welcome to DW News Africa, sir. Is it realistic to think it is possible that Paul Biya can be beaten or could lose the election coming up later in the year?
Well, thanks for having me on your program. I'm a very optimistic person. Yes, it's possible to defeat Paul Biya, just like possible to defeat any president. But for us to be able to defeat Mr. Biya, there's need for the opposition, the Cameroonians in its entirety, the people of Cameroon, to work hard individually and collectively, from registering, from voting and protecting their votes, raising awareness and sensitization on the need for people to vote and the need for necessary changes in Cameroon. Yes, it's easier to defeat Mr. Biya, or it's not impossible to defeat Mr. Biya on the ballot box.
Right. You talk about the opposition there, which is divided. 10 candidates have announced that they are running. Doesn't the opposition need to combine forces behind a unity candidate then?
I think the first thing perhaps is their strategy, that they decided to first of all announce and subsequently submit their documents. The deadline is supposed to be Friday, to first of all submit their documents so that they are eligible to run for the elections. And then they will probably sit in their, have a meeting and decide who is their candidate. Because also you are dealing with a regime where if just one party submits its document as the candidate of the opposition, they might find a way to frustrate them. So you have these 10 or plus candidates who would definitely submit their application. Then they can sit down, have a conversation on who would be the candidate. That is the wish of many Cameroonians. That's the voice of the people of this country. Because if I take a sample opinion on social media, when I do advocacy, almost everybody's asking the question, why are they not coming to assume that is a strategy, that they first of all want to submit their documents and then they would have a formal discussion. Behind the scenes, a lot of them have been talking. I've spoken to a lot of the leaders who have acknowledged the fact that they have been talking, The question is whether this talk would lead to something serious that would midwife a candidate. Then we might not have one opposition candidate. We might have a few coalitions each coalition would have its own candidate. But I think the first thing is that when the numbers are reduced, it creates more chances for the opposition to win.
Right. President Biya is old and is believed to have been experiencing health problems. Assuming he wins another term, what would happen if he were to die in office? This is somebody who's had a grip on power now for decades.
Biya has been in power for close, 42 or 43 years. From an African perspective, you don't wish death for anybody, the way we are. But it's also a part of life that we are born, we live, and we end up dying. If something happens that is not able to govern the country, then we would need to call another elections. And that's my worry, because at 93, it's not just about somebody dying. But I personally think that, first of all, I want to put it on record that age is not a limiting factor for somebody to run for elections, to be a president, because it's a fundamental right. You can be a president at whatever age. But realistically, in a country where majority, about 70% of the population are young men and women, you cannot tell me that it's a 93-year-old person who is the best candidate to be the president of a country. Let's be honest, because at 93, you don't have a future, you have a past. You cannot be building, cannot be building for the future, because there are going to be health issues as a result of age, which is normal, okay? It happens. If you have lived with an aging parent, you would attest to the fact that at a certain age, their reasoning faculty reduces, their strength, their ability and capacity to work definitely reduces. Mr. Biya is not different. So definitely, if he wins in October, I believe that he will not be able to complete the mandate. And then there will be the need for another election. Why do we waste the money, the limited resources that we don't have? Why would the ruling party not have another candidate, who is also a member of the CPDM party, who is also a Republican, to replace a 93-year-old? I really, to be honest, I'll give you a simple example. If you want to, and I tell my friends in the CPDM, the ruling party, that if you go to a bus stop and you want to get into a bus and the driver is 80 years, you will not get into that bus. If you people are doing a monthly contribution where you pool your resources together, we call it Tonting on Jangi in Cameroon, where at the end of each month, one person benefits from what you guys have contributed. If the first person to benefit from that money is 80 or 85 years, nobody will put his money there. So if you cannot give your life as an individual to a bus driver or conductor, or to somebody you guys are in a Tonting or in Jangi, how do you give the lives of 30 million persons in the hands of one person who is it? So I to be honest, I don't really understand the mindset of those who are advocating for Mr. Biya to run.
Yeah, and you're not alone. Many people would be thinking the way you are. But I ask the question because we tend to see in countries where you've had a strongman leader for a long time, when that individual is removed under whatever circumstances, you have this power vacuum and this struggle for power that sometimes plunges a country into chaos. And I'm just trying to get a sense of, in a country where you have up to 10 candidates on the opposition vying for power, you've obviously outlined what could be the strategy of that on the part of the opposition. It's just a sense of, are structures in place to ensure that if a figure like this is somehow not able to carry out his duties, that the country could still function and not descend into some kind of a political, chaotic environment?
You could look at it from a multifaceted point of view. The country has been functioning, depending on where you stand and the way you consider the definition of functioning, in the presence and the absence of the president. Presence in the sense that I don't think at his age he can have effective power to really man the country. And this is somebody who all of us know him for his inertia, for the fact that, he might, at times, he used to stay out of the country for a while and the country still function. But the problem is that we are in a country where it's about the strong personality, the cult of personality, the hero worship, the kind of North Korean kind of mindset or leadership without building strong institutions. So there's definitely going to be a problem if the president is not, is no longer in power. And I think that is what dictators or authoritarian leaders do. They make the country to depend on them, to give the impression that they are the alpha and the omega, the only ones that can solve us. They are kind of a modern day messiah, that if they are not there, doomsday would come to the country, because that's what they do. And it is a bit surprising that there are people, educated people, young men, who believe that, without him, this country would fall into anarchy. But the question I normally ask is that, how can a country depend on an individual? If you are a leader and you've built a country where that depends only on you, it means you have not succeeded. If you are a parent at home and you've made it in such a way that if you are not available or you are not around, nothing works, then you have a problem. So yes, there are going to be problems. We already feel it. We already feel the struggle for power, the struggle for leadership, the tension between various camps. We have seen where they are instrumentalizing the judiciary to settle scores. So yes, it's already going on. The battle, the tussle for leadership in post-Biya Cameroon is already going on. I'm just afraid that it might get worse and messy.
Allow me to just perhaps maybe bring in what's going on in the United States, where there is this conversation around the former President Biden and who was really running the country, given the public now has a better sense of how poor his health was, particularly towards the end of his term. Is that conversation perhaps happening in Cameroon? Are people asking, is the president who spends a huge amount of time away from the country, out of the public sight, is he really running the country?
Well, for the last couple of years, he's been in the country, but out of public sight. But I'll tell you a little story. A few days ago, I had a meeting with the former minister who was 81. And he told me that the president is older than him with 11 years. When I saw him in my conversations with him, I'm like, wow. The people who are who are insisting that Mr. Biya should run, they don't like this country. They're very wicked. I'll tell you, because when I had the meeting with the 81-year-old person, I looked at him, I was like, wow, imagine at 93. Do you have the capacity, the mental and physical capacity and capabilities to run a country? They are dishonest. They are not doing it for Cameroonians, They are doing it for their personal interest. They want to protect, their interests at the expense of the country. There is no justification, scientifically or whatever, the way you look at it, that the best candidate to run a country is somebody who is in his 90s. It's no way. And you see, history has a way of playing out. In the long run, it might not be in my lifetime. We would have declassified reports, on the mental state of the president in 2025. And people will be held accountable for the fact that they aided and abetted someone who was probably not fit to rule the country, but to be at the helm of office because of their personal interest. They withheld information. They did not provide Cameroonians the necessary information about the health of their president, about the situation, the condition of their president. You see, aging is a beautiful thing from an African perspective. All of us wish to grow older, to see our children, our great-grandchildren. But I don't think that at this age, rather than just stay at home with your family, you want to be governing or managing a country of about 30 million with all the problems that they have. You should better be resting. Be bothered about this kind of problems. No road, no electricity, no water, infrastructure-wise, there are no jobs for young people. That's not something at 92 you should be focused on. You should be focused on your grandkids and not bothering about what is happening in the country.
Mr. Balla, so candidates have until July 21 to declare that they would be running for office. Do you intend to run?
Candidates, they had already declared. They had declared their intention. They have up to 21 days to actually, up to I think Friday, if I'm not mistaken, to actually submit their documents. I've said it several times. I know this question always comes up. I am not running. I'm not a candidate for the presidential election. I think my intention or what I'm doing is to help in my own little way to see how progressive forces, positions, civil society organizations, and all concerned Cameroonians who want change, how they can come together and work to ensure that we have a free and fair election, and that on the 12th of October, we have a president that would be a president that works in the interest of the country. So that's why I am focused on, I used to be focused on mobilizing people to register. My next advocacy is now to encourage them to start voting, to explain to them the essence of voting, but equally also try to see how we can build bridges amongst the different opposition leaders to try to work with them to reduce their differences so they can have a common candidate and that, they face Mr. Biya in the next election in October.
Mr. Agbor Balla, we appreciate you being on DW News Africa. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. And I appreciate the wonderful job you're doing.
Thank you very much.